All right. Good morning, you guys. We are back with another episode of Advanced Training Methods for you guys today. Before we get started on that one, we're just going to kind of do a little recap of what advanced training methods are. So it's just ways to really break through plateaus. It's ways to sometimes spice up your training methods if you haven't. And it's just another way to increase your overall training effort. So there's so many of these, and we just have another 4 that we're going to get into, but
Yeah, I think we're going to do 4 parts. So this is our 3rd part for the advanced training methods, but we're going to do one more. And
we said we were going to do 3, but there's just a lot more that I want to cover. There's a lot of really interesting and fun ones out there, and like really useful ones too. And they're kind of geared towards different what you're training kind of.
And then
styles.
everybody has more options. You have more options for what you might want to incorporate into your training. Because if we left some out, then maybe there was one that you would have really enjoyed doing on the 4th.
It was 12. I'm so behind on my water. And here I'm trying to have another coffee.
I know,
that's what I'm doing.
I tried to make my coffee into chai tea with your spices and everything. Okay, do you want to try it? It actually tastes like it. Here.
A chai tea?
Yeah, it tastes like a coffee chai tea. I think I invented something actually. What do you think?
Not bad. I'm gonna leave that on here because I need to.
Personally, I like the
reminded. Kayla came over this morning for some training, and she's sitting here getting mad at me for putting her on the story because she thought she looked like a mess. And then I look over and I see her filming herself in her workouts. I'm like,
okay, no. Listen, this is what I was wearing. I was wearing my workout shorts, my sweatpants looked like a mess, an oversized shirt, and then I put a big sweater on over my oversized shirt, and my oversized shirt was like peeking out. I just looked like
shit.
You just spit into my mouth. Kelly, your spit just went in my mouth. That's the grossest thing. Come on. No, I didn't. A big glob of cold spit into my mouth. Come on. Ew. Anyways, so we did our train this morning, which was great.
Mine was an issue from Orangey.
And the cat was in there. I brought my dog to play with Caitlin's dog. That was a fun time until that dog
loved it.
Humped my dog a lot.
It's time to move on.
I need to tell them everything.
I guess
we're ahead of schedule. We're filming.
I was just gonna say that. You just take things over. Normally our podcast day is took the words right out.
But I didn't know how it went, so it's tough.
Oh my god, we gotta focus. Yeah, normally
we're so unproductive.
You're reading the word.
We are productive.
Normally our podcast day is on Sundays. It's in quotations on Sundays because it's never actually been done.
It's always filmed on a Monday or a Tuesday or a Wednesday.
Wednesday morning, yeah. That procrastination style of us needs to change. Something needs to change. So today we're making a change. We're doing it directly instead. Mainly because Kayla came over, so we're like, you know what? We might as well just nail this one out.
To be honest, though, I'd much rather skip doing this and dye my hair like was planned. But
on the bright side, we're already we're getting prepared for it, so we're just ready to get into it.
The first one, we're gonna dive in because otherwise you'll hear mindless chatter for the next 30 minutes. We're gonna dive in with the first one, which I don't think that's
Dropsets.
Yeah.
The first advanced training method that we are bringing you guys today is Dropsets. So,
did you press play on the camera? I don't see the red dot on. Is it on? Is the camera?
I don't think a red dot comes on.
But let's see. Is the camera turned on as well? I mean, the microphone. I know you forget that almost every time.
It's recording. Thank you.
Okay, well, let's double check, until we get too far in. Anyways, yeah, we're starting with Dropsets, as Caitlin said.
And Dropsets was actually popularized by Joe Weider and Arnold Schwarzenegger. So, and that was in the 1980s.
Arnold Schwarzenegger?
I should have his name. Schwarzenegger?
I should have really bad pronunciation of every single word. I've read 100 books. I feel over 100, obviously, but I just skipped the words I didn't know. So
if that was popularized in the 1980s, we were born in 1990s, 1997. You should have.
He probably made the Arnold Press, yeah.
Yeah, he is a credit.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yes. Anyways, we're gonna talk about Dropsets, and Dropsets are also known as strip sets. They actually have a few other names besides Dropsets and strip sets. Actually, I want to just say what they are. Because I literally just saw it.
But anyways, kind of just go into what they are.
Go ahead.
Drop sets are characterized by starting with a heavy weight, basically doing as many reps as you can, then dropping the weight and going lighter into a lighter weight, and then doing as many reps as you can with the lighter weight. And usually it's with minimal rest in between those two sets.
Perfect. Thank you, Kayla.
You're welcome.
Drop sets are also known as strip sets, burnouts, running the rack, and even more in antiquated multi-poutage system.
I'm gonna start calling them running the rack. I like
running the rack. I also like strip sets because I do just use the word drop sets though, like in my programming, because I feel like that's the most universal. Running the rack though makes it kind of sound like a badass. Like
running the rack.
Yeah. Usually you're just dropping from heavyweight and you're reducing it every time. Just like Kayla kind of said. And this method is used to extend sets beyond failure. So it's basically allowing you to keep pushing past failure by like reducing that weight every time. Am I repeating what you said already?
No, not exactly.
Okay.
In a different way. Like we usually do. But the cool thing that I really like about drop sets is that these not only are kind of used to enhance your training, obviously, but also you can use drop sets if maybe you don't have a ton of the time in the gym. So for me, I really want to get great workouts in every single time, but I'm not always the best at wanting to stick around for a long period of time. So if you want to, basically what I just said, do your workouts in short amounts of time, you can do drop sets.
It's an even quicker way than supersets.
Yeah.
Because you're literally just, this is per exercise usually for drop sets, but supersets is obviously multiple different exercises, usually fine, but drop sets is even more efficient, even though it's not exactly working the same way.
And I use drop sets in my upper and my lower body days just because you can use them, obviously, with lots of different exercises.
I would say that some of the main ones people like to use for would be, if you're going to talk about like the primary list, it'd be like a hip thrust or squat. For upper, it'd be more so like bench press. It's hard. You could do a drop set doing pull-ups and just like have the belts around your waist and have weights on if you're that advanced. Otherwise, maybe like you can also do drop sets using bands, every time you add another band and you kind of keep pushing till failure. So, for example, let's talk about like hip thrust, and we're gonna do more of like for us or for anybody else, this could probably be like more of a moderate hip thrust day. So say you have 100 pounds. The way you would set that up is you could set up multiple different ways, but
to the mic.
Facing
the mic, just not into my mouth.
Do you see that? I am talking loud enough. You don't need to scream. Anyways, you can set that up with 225 plates on each side, 4 10s on each side, and 2 5s. And I don't think people usually they usually do like a triple drop set where they strip off weight twice, so you don't have to maybe go that in depth if you don't want to. But that would allow you to really strip things off. Like you could strip off a 5 the first time. You could strip off a 5 and 2 10s the first time. Like that's how you can strip things off. So you got to make it accessible to strip off.
For the 3 sets, are people stripping weight just for the first set, then putting the weight back on, doing as many as you can again, and then stripping the same weight off again?
What?
What? I'm saying for people that don't really understand what you're saying.
Oh, okay. I get what you're trying to get me to explain it.
Yeah.
So if you have for example, let's say we're doing hip thrust, you're going to start with that first weight, which is going to be your heavy weight, and that's going to be with all the weight on. Once you reach failure and you can't do anymore, you stop. You strip off a plate on each side, and you go again until failure. So every time that you hit failure, you're going to stop, strip off that weight between it, and they're going to go again, and then you're just going to keep going, like obviously until you hit failure, but you got to make sure that you go immediately. So you're not taking a rest in between stripping that weight off. You get right back into it and go again.
So let's say your first set, you start with 280 pounds, okay?
You gave an example, and you wanted to interrupt me, not listen.
I know, I'm sorry. But then
you have your own.
I'm saying then you strip off weight again, like to maybe 200 pounds. So you took off 80 pounds, let's say, and you go to failure again, maybe.
Take off 80 pounds.
Jesus. Maybe not that much I said, but let's just hypothetically take off 80 pounds. That's your first set. Now for your second set,
your first set was before you took off the 80 pounds. Your first set was when you did with the whole heavyweight. That's your first one. So a triple drop set, you do the first heavyweight, then you take off weights, you do your second set, you take off weights, you do your third set. That's your triple drop set.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, I know what you do, but you're confusing me with how you're trying to say it to me.
Okay, I just think, yes. Okay, moving on. I don't want to
get... Okay, but overall, The great thing about the drop sets is you're limiting your rest time between your sets, so it extends your time under tension. And like we were talking about, we typically program a triple drop set, so you're going to drop the weight twice, and you'll lift the weight 3 times. Yes, Kayla.
Okay, I'm just a little confused. Just give me a second. And I'm not confused, but what I'm saying is you do 3 sets. In those sets, you do 2 reps. Not 2 reps. All right, we paused it really quick because I had to get it correct with Kayla. I was confused what she was trying to say. What I was trying to say is that
different wavelengths. I was talking about like how you drop it, and you were talking about like the overall sets.
Yeah, so we should just move on.
Well, probably. You can explain it. So a lot of people are thinking, if you're dropping the weight, say you drop the weights 3 times, is that one big set? Like you dropped the weights 3 times, you did all those reps, is that one big set? The answer is no. You technically did 3 sets, and you dropped the weight for every set, and you're just going. So you want to, next time you go train, you want to try and beat your repetitions. So if you do the same weight for your heavy set, and say you did 10 before you had to drop the weight because of how heavy it was, and you achieved failure, then next week you want to either try and push through 10 reps, or like maybe you went up higher a little bit in the weight, whatever it was. But that's how you kind of progress.
Exactly. The other thing I really want to talk about with drop sets is reverse drop sets. If you don't understand what this is, I'm going to explain it for you. Drop sets, like we just explained, is when you go down in the weight. Reverse drop sets is when you go up in the weight. So you're going to go up in the weight, and eventually your reps are obviously going to get smaller and smaller. So I'm going to start with like 50 pounds of shoulder presses, maybe like 25s in each arm, and I'm going to maybe max out at 20 reps. And then the next time I'm going to up the weight to like 30s in each arm.
Going up.
Yep, I'm going to up the weight to 30s in each arm, and then maybe I'm only going to get like 15 or 10 reps.
Yep.
So you're just going to keep upping the weight, and then your reps are obviously going to be going down, and that is reverse drop sets, which is cool.
I feel like is that also called like pyramid style? There's a lot of different names.
They kind of bleed into
a little
different,
bit.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna move on to pause reps. Are we only on the second one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're making a great time.
Yeah. All right, guys, pause reps. So pause reps are you pause at the bottom or the top of a movement during each rep. And some people usually like to just program pause reps at the hardest part of the movement. So, for the squats to be the bottom, for hip thrust to be the top. Bench press, it would be the top, trying to lock out. And it doesn't have to be that way, so you can also program it at the bottom. And I guess we would use this more so in like a hip thrust scenario when you're trying to reduce that tension and give those glutes a break. So you pause for a second at the bottom. It allows you, one, to keep going with your repetitions and maybe push past a little further, get a little further before you get fatigued.
Exactly. Now, I know that a lot of people are thinking when they hear the word pause, that means like a second. But your pauses can actually be a wide range of seconds. So you could do a pause for 1 second, you could do a pause for 3 seconds, or you could do even a pause of 5 seconds. The biggest thing here is making sure that you're counting slowly enough to actually reach 5 seconds. So if you're going to pause the top of a hip thrust movement and you're going to say, I'm going to do a 3-second pause, you're not going 1, 2, 3. Like, obviously, that's like 2 seconds probably. Yeah. You got to go 1, 2, 3, and then go down. Make sure that you're actually, and if you can't pause for that amount of time, maybe just up the seconds by 2 seconds. Just make sure you're getting your full 3-second pause. So
I was gonna say, yeah.
Seconds.
I've seen a lot of people how they program with higher second pauses, and some people are like, "Well, why do you need to hold that for 6 seconds?" It's because of how fast people count. They're just trying to ensure that people are actually holding that for a good amount of time for their pause. But pause reps are used usually to make training more challenging. So you usually also need, because of this, you need to go lighter than you normally would. So you're increasing obviously your time under tension a little bit with doing the pause. And you're not going to be able to do as many reps with the load that you have. So that's why you usually reduce the load a little bit if you want to keep with that same rep range.
But I really love pause reps for the fact that they reduce increase your time under tension. Because a lot of times with the heavy weight, you're not throwing the weight around, but obviously you're not going like really, really slow with it. So you're going to be like using the heavier weight. But to kind of work your muscles in a different way with the increased time under tension is obviously going to be great for building that muscle as well.
Another form of pause reps is actually dead stop reps. There's dead stop reps and there's touch and go reps. And we've utilized both of them, but they're different forms of pause reps. So if you do a dead stop rep, That's usually to generate power, and it's meant for like max strength, like maximal strength production.
And the dead stop reps like completely resetting, right?
Yeah, it's completely resetting. So a lot of this is like you're usually lifting a pretty heavy load if you're doing dead stop reps. I've seen people utilize it. I utilize it in my deadlifts.
That's why I see the
biggest. I also use it too because I just really would like to reset and make sure my form's good, and then I can explode through it. Because sometimes you start losing form as it starts getting harder.
Yeah.
I also use it for dead stop reps in dumbbell rows, single arm. I do a dead stop rep at the bottom, I reset, and I explode through the movement. And so that's really a great way to like just train if you're training for max strength, max power output. On the other side, if you're doing touch go reps, that's a little bit different. You're not resetting fully. You're literally just touching the ground. You're touching the bottom of the movement, and then you're going again. So it's not a reset part of the movement. You're just touching and going.
I think touching and going is really helpful too, just to make sure people get to the bottom of the movement all
and
the way.
it like releases a little bit of that
pressure, a little bit of the load on you.
Yeah, definitely. All right, I feel like that covered it pretty well. There's just so many different forms of pause reps, like what we talked about, the dead stop reps, the touch and go reps. So it's really however you like, really what your training goals are and how you want to implement them. But you really need to think when you're doing any type of training program or when you're implementing anything, you need to think first about what your goals are. So you don't want to just start putting in random things in your training because it's cool. Like you really want it to help you achieve, greater success towards your goal and help you get there faster, which is what a lot of these different methods are going to be doing for you if you're going to be trying to push past plateaus or whatever it is.
Exactly. I think we kind of talked about like making sure that you kind of are specific in weeding out which of these advanced training methods would actually be useful for you. But we're just going over all of them.
I would say too with the dead stop, I've seen a lot more athletes training this way just to become more explosive and be able to power through those movements. So like that's where you really start thinking, okay, what is this movement like geared towards? What can it help me accomplish? Who's this going to be likely to benefit more? And whatnot.
And even if you're not sure, like if this isn't giving you enough information, go ahead and just even Google it. Like, what is this type of exercise or advanced training method really going to be helpful in focusing towards, like an athlete or a bodybuilder or just your general population, maybe. Like you could find so much more information even on these.
I would say too, though, if you're gonna Google, there's so many different outlets, and like you can go on one website or one site and read something, and then you can go on the next link and it can be completely contradictory. Because I said it right. So I think it's just one is really important if you're gonna Google it to get a really well-rounded amount of information about it, and really like most likely what's going to be correct is what the majority of the information points to, hopefully anyways.
So you could read multiple different articles.
But otherwise, try and find a more reputable site.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. All right, we're going to move on to the next one, which is going to be accommodating resistance.
Before you get into that, I just want to talk about who popularized this, which is Louis Simmons, and it's considered bands and chains. So he was like one of the first pioneers to really start using bands and chains and just really started putting out there. And this was in the 1980s, 1990s. And anyways, he ended up like kind of coining the term accommodating resistance, is what he would call it.
My favorite thing about accommodating resistance, especially if you have ever seen anybody on Instagram or in the weight room putting chains on the end of their barbell when they're doing a squat, is it looks like beast mode.
Looks badass.
Yeah, like they're putting chains on there and they're exploding up with their weight and stuff.
Right.
I'm like, holy shit.
So, do you want to talk about what accommodating resistance is?
It's basically just attaching bands or even chains to increase the resistance on the movement upwards.
Yep, at the lockout position or the top half of an exercise. So, for example, like Kayla just kind of touched on quick, for squats, you rise upward. So if you have chains on the ground, like on your barbell, or you have bands on, when you rise upward through that squat, your chains are going to lift off the ground, increasing that force placed on you, and same with the bands. So the bands are going to stretch, so that's going to increase the force on you when you're going through that movement. And it's just basically increasing the difficulty as well.
And when it kind of comes to picking between a band or a chain, I think you need to, one, think about, okay, is this going to help me with like my balance? Like, for example, if you're doing a squat, chains obviously I think are very beneficial because when you're doing that squat, you're coming up and you're trying to stay balanced, you're trying to keep your core tight, and you're really just trying to make sure that your movement and your body is still in alignment throughout the full range of motion. Whereas if you're doing a hip thrust, it might be easier just to use bands and wrap it around like a squat rack when you're doing it. It just kind of also comes to ease of the movement.
Up really quick. What we love about accommodating resistance is that it's really great for producing good amounts of tension and high amounts of metabolic stress while limiting the muscle damage for those exercises. Again, you can do these with the squat. You can do it with chest press. We really like bands for the deadlift and for the hip thrust variations, but it's really up to you with how you want to program that into your training.
Or if you even do one program. Like for me, the only thing that I've ever used accommodating resistance with is on my hip thrust. I've placed a band before trying to use dumbbells, but they weren't exactly
hold it down.
Yeah, it didn't really work out the best, honestly. But so it really just depends if that's something you really want to incorporate, if it's something that you have the ability to incorporate, if you have the chains or the spots to kind of wrap those bands around to keep them stationary. It just depends.
Sometimes it's great if you can somehow hip thrust inside. Like you can use a squat rack and hip thrust inside of there, or if you put some plates down, sometimes that could really like help you.
Just have you incorporated this into your training?
Yeah, I have. But I've done it. I've actually put it like underneath my bench before, and then around the barbell, where it's like it's very unconventional how I set it up, but
it still works, I'm sure.
Yeah, it still worked. I would love me and Nathan have always really wanted to do is we want to get some chains for the shed.
That'd be cool. I'd really like to.
I just want to work it. I want to, really be able to work in different, like, have that force in different ranges of motion. And I think it'd be really cool to have it, like, for my squats and things like that.
I really want to try that, actually. Anyways, after this is our.
By the way, like, well, people probably know this, but, like, it's just cool that there's still so many things that Louis Simmons has popularized and has around because he had passed away, at the beginning of this year. And it was just
not old, was he?
No, he wasn't that old. I think he's in his, like, 70s, I want to say. Maybe
I feel like it was 70s for some reason, like 75 or.
But he's popularized and came up with so much stuff. Even the reverse hyper, he credited with like literally inventing the reverse hyper. He literally invented the reverse hyper, which is just really cool that he was not only somebody who liked to put the methods to use, but he was also the one who wanted to create those methods and went out and did the research and the studies to create these types of just methods and exercises that we implement into our own trainings now.
Yeah, honestly, I never really found a huge use for science. I just didn't really like it in school, but when it starts to apply to like the way you train and everything, like
then you just like captivated by it. Yeah, you just are like, oh my gosh, wow, like okay, I remember hearing about this and like makes sense now, kind of.
Exactly. So we are now moving on to our fourth and final advanced training method of this podcast, which is going to be dynamic effort reps. And some people call them dynamic effort methods. But reps means it makes more sense to me because you're using reps.
All right, take us away.
This was actually created by the Soviets, and they did it because they wanted to obviously enhance their athletes. It's not exactly a technique that is used to advance your muscle growth or for hypertrophy, but it is used for power and for a lot of athletics. Like it's really used to create force. So obviously athletes are going to need force, and a lot of different sports are going to be doing.
And power, yep.
And power.
Did you try how's lighter loads usually?
No, I haven't done it.
Okay, so for your dynamic effort reps, it is usually going to be lighter loads, but you're having max acceleration and speed with these types of reps. Like Kill said, it's definitely geared towards the athletes. You want to help develop power. The difference, though, between these dynamic effort reps and like per se plyometric training, I think a lot of people get really confused and have a hard time differentiating between the two. Plyometrics training is when you're leaving the ground. So you're still generating the exercise towards force and power output, but you're literally leaving the ground. So one example of a plyometric training, just really quick on the side, is going to be like a jump lunge with dumbbells. You got your dumbbells, you're jumping there, that's generating power, that's going to be a plyometric style training exercise. Versus if you're doing a dynamic effort type of exercise, you're not leaving the ground. So that's going to be your squats, your deadlifts, your sled pushes, like all that, but doing it in a dynamic effort way.
Even for the lunge, though, you could still do it in dynamic effort reps just by exploding upward and not obviously leaving the ground.
Yep. So really, like, it's completely all about centered around exploding out of the bottom of a lift. So whether that be the bottom of your squat exploding up, the bottom of your hip thrust exploding through to lock out, and that's where you're going to generate that force through. Which is just, I've utilized them a lot with my squats when I'm going a little bit light. Like, obviously, it's very hard to
use a heavy weight.
To use a heavy weight and generate the same amount of power output as you could if you had a lighter weight on your back or lighter weight, on your pelvis, wherever it is that you're like training from. But
the cool thing about this is, like I was just talking about science, this actually came from Isaac Newton. It's his law that force exerted on an object is directly proportionate to its mass and acceleration. So that's F equals M times A, which is crazy because I remember learning
that formula and like how
the formula. But so basically, what's saying is that to develop a greater force, you have to do either one of two things. You either need to A, accelerate the weight faster, or B, move a heavier weight. Obviously, dynamic effort reps is accelerating the weight faster. So you're just trying to, like Caitlin said, create that force and the power behind the movement.
Sled pushes is almost like move a heavier weight though, because for a sled push you can still like increase that dynamic effort by pushing something, like obviously you're pushing something on more of a horizontal plane, but you're still increasing the effort through the extra weight on there. It doesn't have to be a lower weight and like being sprinting through it, because then it kind of becomes more of like an endurance style type of training when you're
it could be both.
It could be a little bit both. Yeah.
So that
you need to be able to have something that's going to be hard that you're going to be like crushing towards when it comes to sleds.
Sorry, I keep trying to interrupt in the middle. But I think it's so cool that the objective of the dynamic. Oh my goodness. No, I get like everything just mixed in my mouth or head. But the objective of the dynamic effort reps is really just to train lifters to explode out of the bottom of the movement, out of the bottom of the lift. And like we said, this is super important. Like if you're a volleyball player and you want to jump up and spike the ball or hit the ball, you want to explode off the ground and then be able to use that force momentum into your hit. That's like the whole point. And this is going to help you do that.
Yeah, it is. Do you know that I literally said it, you're exploding out of the bottom of the lift, and then you're like, you can explode out of the bottom of the lift. Yes, Kayla, we've covered that. You don't listen to me talk.
But I guess repeating it's fine.
It's fine. I agree with that though. Like that's how, and that's too. Like we've covered this a little bit before, but that's why so many people think that the only thing they need to do if they want to get, like generate more power or be able to jump higher, sprint faster,
is just do that.
Yeah,
over and over again.
Is to practice like plyometrics or just dynamic effort type reps. And while that yes is going to help you, probably help you a little bit generate more force output, but you also need to have that strength behind it. How can you expect to run faster, jump higher, move quicker out of a standstill position if you don't have the strength to push off and power through? So that's where strength training really comes in, where the basics and the fundamentals are so important before you start implementing these other things. These, like we kind of talked about, these added advanced methods are going to be so useful to advance your trainings in other ways, but you need to have those basics first.
There was a Soviet actually that created the book. It was like the science and practice of strength training, and his name was Vladimir. I don't even know how.
That's Skowsky.
ZatsiorSky.
Is that Skowsky?
Sky. I don't know. But if you do want to learn like anything more, this was obviously a Soviet, so it's gonna be super cool. I think I really want to get that book actually now after I find that.
Oh my gosh! Like I have the.
If you want to learn more, I
have like quite a few books from some Russian sports scientists that were really advanced in the training knowledge compared to a lot of they more so they're just more advanced than we were at the time, and their training would help me. But anyways, guys, thanks again for everything. We're gonna end it here. You guys have a great day. We'll see you in the next one.